You all know who Forrest Gump was? Well, this is in the future sometime. Forrest Gump had passed away, and he went to St. Peter at the gate. St. Peter said, "Forrest, you're not a very smart guy." He said, "You haven't been very good either. And if you're going to get in the kingdom, I'm going to have to ask you 3 questions first, and you've got to get all of them right, or you can't get in." Forrest says, "Okay." St. Peter gives him a little pad and a paper. He says, "Write these down. I'm going to give you 20 minutes. When I ask you for the answers, you better have them all." Forrest says, "Okay." St. Peter says, "Okay, first question. How many days in the week begin with the letter T?" So Forrest writes it down. St. Peter says, "And the second question. How many seconds are there in a year?" Forrest writes that down. And the third one, St. Peter says, "This is a tough one, Forrest. You got to get all 3 right. You have to know God's first name." Forrest writes it down. What is God's first name? 20 minutes later, St. Peter calls him back. He said, "Forrest, time is up. You've got to answer the 3 questions now and get them all right." So St. Peter says, "First question, name the days of the week that start with the letter T." Forrest says, "Well, that's the easy one. Today and tomorrow." St. Peter says, "Well, that's not quite what I had in mind, but technically I guess I'll give you that one." This is question 1. He says, "Now, Forrest, how many seconds are there in a year?" Forrest says, "Well, I'm not very good at math, but I think there's 12. St. Peter said, 12 seconds in a year? How did you figure that?" He says, "Well, there's January 2nd, February 2nd. St. Peter says, "Well, that's not quite what I had in mind for an answer, but I guess technically you're correct. So I'll give you, that's the second one." He says, "Forrest, this third question, this is a tough one. You've got to come up with God's first name." Forrest says, "Well, that's the easiest one of all. It's Andy." He said, "How did you figure out it was Andy?" He says, "Well, from the song, Andy walked